let's talk for a second about trail conditions and water carries before we get into gear and some of the other stats that I've tracked that I think are kind of interesting. So let's talk about trail conditions. We've talked about this before that, like, just like I mentioned, like, because of the water constantly eroding the dirt off of the trails, because these things feel like they're dry riverbeds more than trails half the time, it's extremely rocky. And I'm not saying it's all kinds. It's big boulders, it's small round rocks that just wear your feet out. There's sections where you're just stepping from one rock to another rock to another rock, and they're all uneven, they're all jagged, they're all sharp. So with the trail runner, it really starts to fatigue your foot because in a boot, you've got a stiffer sole. And so you don't feel as much of that over time. In a trail runner, you will feel it. And if you're Tyler and you had a specific trail runner, you extra feel it because you didn't even have, like, on the bottom of – so
my main mistake with that was I went and did that trail last time on the pair of trail runners that I'd used all summer to train for the Highline. So I already had 300 plus miles on those shoes before we started. And, depending on the brand of shoe and the recommendation, you're supposed to be retiring your shoes at that mileage level. And I just didn't think too much of it, and I paid for it in the end. Because,
well, you're thinking I'm not running probably. I'm just hiking.
Yeah, but miles are miles, and those miles are ridiculously jagged. So, yeah, my feet were really feeling it by even by day 4. I was getting pretty tender-footed. I wasn't getting blisters or anything like that because I was conditioned, fairly well and used to those shoes. But I was just getting tender. Yeah.
I think all of us were getting tender, but Tyler seemed to be feeling it more. And I would say just some takeaways from that would be you were running the Ultra Olympus
4, yeah.
And on the bottom of that, like if you were to typically look at the bottom of a trail runner, they'll have a harder rubberized sole. It's thin, but it's there, and then they've got all the foam. On his particular shoe, that rubberized sole is mainly around the outside, so the inner section of that shoe didn't have that. And so there was one point I don't remember if it was that trail or a different trail. I mean, I've watched a stick poke through the bottom of all of the foam and into your shoe.
Yeah.
It was pretty intense. And
like a 3/4 inch long jagged thorn.
Because of that, nothing against Ultras. I actually just recently picked up a pair, even though I've been kind of not liking Ultras for a handful of years. I recently picked up a pair again to try them out, and there's some things I like about them. But to be noted, you do want at least the harder rubberized, grippy part of the shoe, a full bottom on it. Helped us more than it helped him. Even though his was our higher cushion, more foam, he could still get like a sharp poke better than I could say in the Solomons I was running for that trip.
Yeah, it's I think the Lone Peaks, which is like the next tier down in cushion, they have a full Vibram sole, and those would have been just fine.
Yeah,
but
learning lessons.
Yep, learning lessons. We did discuss on trail if we would have traded our trail runners for some lightweight mids, some mid-height hiking boots, and I think if I were to do it again, I probably would. Like
I think if you had the right mid, and we're talking like trail runner with barely a little top on it type of mid, not like a, don't think like a full on boot, like a Merrill Moab, or I've got a Solomon. Oh crap, what are they? Cross something. You have a Hoka that's just.
I have the Hoka Kaha Sky, which is a super light.
They're like more of a trail runner with a boot upper than anything else, but they are just a hair stiffer.
Yeah.
But they're just not like you wouldn't want to throw on a heavy pair of boots because you're going 100 miles and we were doing it fast. So that may be preferred. It may be preferred. Sitting here back in this chair, I'm like, I don't know, I might just stick to the trail runners. But in the moment, by the end of the trail, I think we would have swapped them out. Like day one, we wouldn't have, but by day 5, we probably would have.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful at all, but
Yeah, I think it's something to consider. Like, we're not fans of big, heavy boots.
no,
They
not at all.
don't do you any, even if they're stiff and they protect your feet and your ankles, they're kind of a crutch. Because if they're stabilizing your ankle so much that your ankle doesn't get stronger when you're training and hiking, then that's not great. But then too, we subscribe to that belief, which I think we need to do some like lab testing to really figure out the difference. But we subscribe to the belief that a pound on your feet is equal to like 10 extra pounds on your back, So it's really fatiguing to have too big of a boot.
It really is. I love to give the example of if anyone's like ridden a road bike versus a trail bike. I remember specifically, I had more of a like this mountain bike that came with like mud tires on it, and I remember I was almost only doing city riding on this bike, and so I eventually switched it to a more narrow tire, and I felt 50% more efficient, like just instantly. And I didn't even have like the super skinny road tires. I'm talking just
slick,
same rim, just a slick tire.
Yeah.
It's massive, but give it a shot. You will notice a difference if you can shave weight off of your feet. But just know, going into this, it's rocky. You may want to consider things for foot protection, and mainly you want to train on uneven terrain so that your ankles and feet and all of that can get used to having its own stability in there. You're not going to roll an ankle on day one. You want to build that up, and you want to have it strong enough that by the end of day, 5, you're not so fatigued that then you're going to roll your ankles. So just be prepared for that when training for this kind of stuff. That you don't want to be just walking in the city or climbing up just stairs, right? You want to get off on uneven terrain.
I would say trekking poles too are pretty critical for how rocky that terrain is and how steep and gnarly some of those passes are. I know a lot of people don't love to hike with trekking poles because it feels awkward or it's extra money and weight, But when you get up in the high country and you get that far into the back country where no one's getting back to you to help you very easy, trekking poles saved us all from falls at different points, either because we were standing on loose, rolly, softball-sized rocks or because we're getting tired or what. But it's that's something to consider.
I mean, if you look at it, our stance on that is, I would say, just very strong. Whether it's Highline or other ones, we have a very strong stance on use trekking poles. We build trekking pole shelters because to us, everyone should have trekking poles. It's something we have a pretty hard stance on. So yeah, totally agree with that.